and it blew the deal up. There was someone waiting in the background that came in, literally swooped the property up for $1.3 million more than I had the deal essentially locked up for.
Wow.
Literally, the purchase agreement was in my hand, and if I would have just paid the $5,000 for closing, I would have had that deal wrapped up, and literally in 3 months, maybe even 2, there would have been $1.3 million of built-in equity.
Here's the thing that sometimes I think people get caught up in is over negotiating. They take it too far. They have a good deal, it's under contract, and they just want it better. They just want to get the next level. They want to hammer the other side.
Yeah.
That can burn you. Like
Big
sometimes
time.
you got to freaking know what you have. You got to be willing to like settle somewhere in the middle or risk losing the deal. 100%. Right? Have you ever had this happen? We all have. I had it happen, by the way. Like, it still haunts me today.
Yeah.
For $10,000, I tried to negotiate something, and it sold the next day. And that property is now on the market. I would have had it for $400,000. It's now on the market. I think it's going to sell for $750 in 2 or 3 years. So that $10,000 cost me $250,000. Anyways, that's my story. I'm sure you have. I can see the smile. I'm sure you have a couple,
man.
At least.
So, and this actually happened fairly recent, but I'll explain a couple scenarios very similar to that are actually opposite to what just recently happened, which is why I'm even more fucking pissed off. So to your $10,000 deal, I have done this multiple times where the sellers were being the bullies on the other side and they were holding firm, and I didn't give a fuck. I just did the deal for the extra $5,000 or $10,000 because I didn't give a shit. I was like, $5,000 or $10,000.
So you're the seller.
No. I was the buyer.
Oh, you're the buyer.
Yeah,
okay.
So I was the buyer. So the sellers were holding firm or whatever.
Gotcha.
We tried to, say for example, we tried to go in for like a reduction after some stupid shit we found or whatever. We just try. I try it literally on everything. I at least try.
It doesn't hurt to
no,
try.
it doesn't try.
As long as you don't.
It doesn't hurt to
put
try.
the ball in their
No,
court.
exactly. That's another thing.
That's the problem.
Don't fucking put the ball in their court. Go in verbally asking like, hey, listen, like, what's your temperature on this? Like, how do you feel about this? We found this. We're not really sure about it. Are you open to a reduction or whatever? Especially in a hot market. It's very important. I would say it's okay to put the ball in someone's court if the market isn't hot. If the market's like super hot, you don't put the ball in the other person's court, okay? So I have multiple times just sucked up the $5,000 or $10,000 extra for a
Even
property.
On Canton.
Oh,
right?
What's that?
Didn't on Canton.
Oh, yeah.
You tried to hammer them.
I tried to hammer them,
They stayed firm. You said, it's still a great deal. We're closing.
Yeah, I tried to. So that's a perfect example, actually. Yeah, exactly. So multiple times on single family homes, I went in at like, verbally tried to get them like, $10,000 less or whatever. Canton, Michigan, the last property that I went on needs about $130,000 worth of work in the next 5 years. But I already knew it was such a great fucking deal that I got for it. I went in verbally. I tried every fucking thing in the book, and they just would not budge because they knew what they had, and there was deals lined the fuck up for hundreds of thousands of dollars more than I locked that deal up for, and they just wouldn't take it. So I said, fuck it. I'm taking the building, and I know I'm going to make it up in the next 5 years. And this 130 is going to look like peanuts in 5 years.
And arrogance and lack of undering what you have under contract could have burned you.
But
sure. You knew, hey, you've done your numbers. You know it's a good deal. Of course, you're going to try verbally or whatever the case, but you're not going to like risk the deal.
So I have a deal that just went down, and it literally,
I can see the pain in your eyes.
It literally cost me fucking $1.3 million. Yeah. So I'll explain what happened here. Fuck, man. So I had a deal, an accepted LOI. It wasn't an accepted purchase agreement, and I had it locked up.
So an LOI is kind of like an agreement. Hey, we're in a negotiation here. So it's not really.
Yeah. So this was
not really a firm deal.
Exactly. It's not super firm. You probably could do a firm LOI. It's rare, but they're usually non-binding. So what an LOI is a letter of intent, and it spells out what the high level shit is: purchase price, what kind of conditions you need, length of conditions, like all that kind of shit, length of closing, whatever. So I had the deal locked up for $7.6 million. Okay. It was a deal in Florida. I won't get into specifics, but it is what it is. So deal in Florida, $7.6 million. Everything was great. Had the financing lined up. Had everything ready to go. Everything was like literally ready to go.
Let's talk a little bit. You love the numbers. The numbers were great.
The numbers were
the
like fucking
location was
stellar.
great.
The location,
market's booming. It was kind of like, okay. Like
I wouldn't say the market was like booming, but the localized submarket wasn't necessarily like booming, but everything around it was booming. So I knew eventually
it's coming.
There's a catalyst for that specific submarket to boom. So I was getting in prior to that submarket booming. Okay, so I could see it. Like this is important about experience and actually like going with your gut. This is exactly the scenario. So you could see the writing on the wall for the area. So we go back and. This is what's odd. So a lot of times, let me explain the letter of intent in the U.S. because we don't have those here. So the letter of intent, the reason why I go in for letter of intent is because the purchase agreement is usually written up by lawyers, and they're not cheap. So what you do is you spell out the letter of intent and go back and forth with the sellers or the selling agent or whatever, and the buying agent, whatever you have working for you. And you get the high level conditions complete. Okay, so then you take that letter of intent and then you send it to your lawyer or the selling or whoever's doing the purchase agreement, and you say write up the purchase agreement based off this letter of intent. Okay, so it lessens the legal expenses by could be significant amounts, not having to bring in the lawyers from the onset of trying to get the deal done. Okay, so. Letter of intent is signed. Everything's fine, okay? The one thing that I was kind of weirded out about was the fact that the selling party wanted me to pay for closing, which is not abnormal. You see that a lot, more often than not, okay? More often than not. But they wanted me to pay for the closing, but also use the seller's lawyer. So my lawyer came back and we're talking about $5,000. Closing costs was going to be about $5,000. And literally there was myself, my lawyer, the seller's agent and the seller's lawyer on a conference call. And the seller's lawyer was saying like, listen, because I was coming from a perspective of, if you're going to make me pay for the closing, I'd like to use my own legal team or my own lawyer or whatever. Totally not unreasonable to go after that, okay? Not saying like, hey, I don't want to pay for it. I didn't even say I don't want to pay for it. Actually, what ended up happening, we said, listen, if you want to use your lawyer, you either need to pay for it, or if you really want us to pay for closing, I want to use my own lawyer. Totally reasonable condition, okay? So we ended up going back to the lawyer, and the lawyer said, listen, we actually said to the selling agent's lawyer, we have somebody that can do the closing like much cheaper, right? Not even a big deal, but just, it's principle, right? Whatever, not a big deal. So we said, listen, if you're quoted much lower, then just present the quote to me and I'll just do it for whatever they're quoting, as long as it's not like super low. Well, it turns out that the lawyer that I was using was going to do it for free because he wants the commissions for the title insurance, which is like $16,000 on this particular deal. Okay, so he doesn't necessarily care about the couple $1,000s for closing. So we went back and said, listen, you pick up the closing costs if you want us to do it, or if you want us to do it, I want to use our own lawyer because he's going to do it for free, basically. Well, apparently that right there struck a chord between the sellers and the seller's lawyer, and it blew the fucking deal up. There was someone waiting in the background that came in, literally swooped the fucking property up for $1.3 million more than I had the deal essentially locked up for. Wow. Literally, the purchase agreement was in my fucking hand, and if I would have just paid the fucking $5,000 for closing, I would have had that deal wrapped up. Insane. And literally in 3 fucking months, maybe even 2, there would have been $1.3 million of built-in equity from the time I literally got the LOI done to the time of closing. We would have made $1.5 million.
Insane.
Like, so this is what I mean. So sometimes exactly, like you have to really understand what you have. But the problem that this is kind of a little bit different than that. I wasn't like over negotiating. I felt that was like a total reasonable thing because my lawyer also was a little bit concerned if their side is closing the deal and I have, a couple $100,000 on deposit in their trust, something and the deal blows up after, something, where I have deposits in with them and something goes awry. He wasn't comfortable with them closing, having my deposit in trust. That was one of the main reasons why he was wanting me to use our legal team versus them.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Understandable. Like, because they're closing they're controlling the closing and they're also controlling the deposit
and the money. Yeah.
So that was the main issue, and I did not think that was an unreasonable request. Apparently, it fucking was, and then lo and behold, I lose out on a potential $1.5 million built in equity by the time I structure the deal. By the time I close, $1.5 million.
And who could have known, right? Like you don't know. That was a couple months of a process, right?
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden that happens.
Literally,
and somebody in the background.
Literally.
So that definitely sucks. Now let me ask you this: would you? Because it is weird, right? But would you have done it differently, like knowing would you have taken that risk and just said, okay, put the money in their account?
So I actually, yes, because I actually didn't think, like if I would have known that, hey, there's someone on deck right now willing to do this deal, you better fucking sign that PA, I would have done it. The fact of the matter is I didn't think, and also I was in discussion, I was in direct contact with the selling agent. He also made it seem like, hey, that's not absolutely not an unreasonable request. So I actually feel I was dealing with, an agent that did lack integrity. I also feel like he leveraged my offer to some extent. So I don't think he actually showed my cards to the other potential buyer because why would you come in so much higher?
Yeah, 1 point
right?
Million.
Like why would you come in 1.3 million higher? If you're going to show my cards, just come in a couple hundred or 100 or 50, whatever. What does that matter? I actually don't think he showed my cards. I think he
just leveraged it.
He leveraged the offer. So we have a bird in hand. Are you going to come to the table or not? And he came to the table.
And he probably ran his numbers and says, hey, this works up to.
It was still a great deal.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so fucking bent.
Yeah.
But whatever. There'll be another one. So it is what it is.
Yeah. And on that front too, like we had discussed that property and how people kind of in the background said to you, like, oh, I don't think it's a good deal.
Exactly.
I don't think this one's good.
It's so funny because I had a couple people tell me that the property was not a good deal. And, lo and behold, here we are.
A month later, $1.3 million.
And this guy, the guy that bought it from the selling agent's, conversations, this guy is actually like a fairly large scale real estate investor. So he obviously knows his shit. He's not buying stuff that's not necessarily a good deal. So, what are these, like, that's the problem too. Like you can't listen to people when you're trying to put these deals together. If the numbers work and, you got a good gut feeling about it, sometimes that's all you need. Yeah.
So sum it up. Like if you know what you have, always try to negotiate, but you got to be wary of putting that final ball in their court because in a hot market, man, there's always people lurking.
Yeah.
And the market's getting more and more competitive.
Yeah.
But hey, lesson learned. Lots of lessons to learn here, right? You get better at negotiating over time. You get better at building rapport with people. You get better at knowing what they want to hear, how to deal with people, making everybody feel like they're winning, building relationships. That's more important than just hammering people.
And you can't expect every deal to go through.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that lesson might make you more money than it costs you in the long run too, right? Who knows, right? Everything happens for a reason. So
fuck, man. I'm still not happy about it, but it is what it is. Sure, it's still kind of fucking fresh.
I can see you're just eating up about it. I'm, hey, a couple years later, even though mine's way smaller scale.
You know what though? At the end of the day too, like, it gives me confidence that I can find deals like that.
Yeah,
and I can structure the deals like that.
You spotted the deal. Yeah. You knew, like, and the numbers even 1 month later tell you that you were right. Yeah. Like you nailed 100%. That down. Yeah. Right. So
at least I know. And this was like far from my backyard. At least I know I know what I'm capable of in this business, and I know what I'm capable of and how I negotiate, and I know I'm good at it. So this deal was a prime example of being able to do that.
You're not going to win every time.
No, exactly.
Is what it is, right? Yep. So, all right, good stuff.